Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into a fascinating ancient truth about Stoicism that, honestly, completely turns our modern understanding totally on its head. If you think you already know what it means to be a Stoic, well, prepare to have your perspective entirely shifted.
Let's be real for a second. When we hear the word Stoic today, we usually picture someone who is, cold, detached, or just bottling up all their emotions. We think of a person with a stiff upper lip, enduring pain without a single grimace. But what if I told you that the ancient founders of Stoicism actually believed that a truly wise person, the Stoic sage, is filled with a profound, almost constant sense of joy? It's completely true. The original philosophy wasn't about erasing your emotional life at all. It was about transforming it into something incredibly rich and beautiful.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the emotionless Stoic myth. Then, passions versus proper emotions, the three species of joy, how often Stoics are actually happy, the compassionate sage, and finally, a day in the life of a Stoic.
Section 1. The Emotionless Stoic Myth. Rethinking apatheia. To really understand the Stoic mind, we absolutely have to address the elephant in the room. You see, the ancient Stoics aimed for a state called apatheia, which literally translates to being without passions. But they were also eudaimonists. That means their ultimate goal was eudaimonia, a happy, flourishing life, or literally a good flow of life. They fundamentally believe that having perfect virtue is both necessary and completely sufficient for true happiness. So attaining apatheia doesn't mean becoming some cold, unfeeling robot. Not at all. It actually means eradicating the violent, irrational emotions that make us miserable, so we can make room for a totally different, elevated kind of emotional life.
Section 2. Passions versus proper emotions. The Stoic emotional grid.
So, to map out the human mind, the Stoics believe that ordinary passions are essentially false judgments. They happen when we mistake things we literally cannot control, what the Stoics called indifference, like wealth, health, or reputation, for genuine goods or genuine evils. Think about it. If you mistakenly believe getting rich is a genuine good, you're going to feel a rational desire for it in the future and violent delight if you happen to get it in the present. On the flip side, if you believe getting sick is a genuine evil, you'll feel fear about it in the future and distress when it actually happens. The Stoics saw these four passions as violent agitations of the soul.
But for the wise person, those wild passions are replaced by the proper emotions, or eupatheiai. Because the sage knows that virtue is the absolutely only true good and vice is the only true bad, their emotions map out completely differently. Desire becomes wish for future virtue. Fear becomes caution against future vice. Delight becomes genuine joy in present virtue. But look closely at this. Notice the fascinating blank space for a present bad. Because the sage possesses perfect virtue and vice is the only true evil, there is simply no present bad in their life whatsoever. Emotional distress literally does not exist for them. You have to remember that to the Stoics, the soul was actually a physical thing. They described ordinary passions as violent, irrational swellings or shrinkings of the soul that completely destroy our internal harmony. Proper emotions, on the other hand, are based on absolute rational knowledge. When a Stoic feels joy, it is a calm, equable, and rational swelling of the soul. It uplifts them without ever disturbing their perfect, harmonious balance. It's like comparing a raging storm to a gentle, steady breeze.
Section 3. The three species of joy. Unpacking the Stoic taxonomy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the Stoics didn't just stop at some generic concept of joy. They actually broke it down into three highly specific Greek concepts depending on what exactly the sage was observing. The first species is euphrosyne, which translates to cheerfulness. This is a calm joy felt in response to virtuous actions. Now remember, to a Stoic sage, every single action they take, whether it's returning a loan, negotiating in the market, or just walking down the street, is done prudently and virtuously. Because they act virtuously whenever they act, and they are fully conscious of it, they experience this deep, resonant cheerfulness nearly constantly throughout their day.
The second species is terpsis, or enjoyment. This is the joy found in one's surrounding advantages. Now, since true advantage only comes from virtue, this means the sage finds profound enjoyment in their own unwavering virtuous state of character. This feeling naturally arises whenever the sage stops to deliberate on a course of action. When they reflect on why a certain choice is the right thing to do, they are actively engaging their virtuous character, and that conscious reflection triggers this quiet, incredibly powerful enjoyment.
The third species is euthymia, meaning good spirits. Now, this joy is directed outward, at the perfect rational order of the universe managed by divine reason, which they called Zeus. Because the Stoics believe the universe is perfectly designed, everything that happens is part of a rational plan. So sure, the sage feels good spirits observing the beauty of nature, but also, and this is the remarkable part, when their own plans fail. If a venture doesn't work out, it was just the will of the universe, and the sage finds joy in that perfect cosmic management. No matter what happens, they're in good spirits.
Section 4. How often are Stoics happy? The historical frequency debate.
This brings us to a really fascinating historical mystery. If the sage has access to all these forms of joy, exactly how often do they actually feel them? Well, the ancient sources actually disagree on this. On one hand, you have the famous Roman Stoic Seneca, who claimed that the joy of the sage is unbroken and continuous, literally never ceasing for a single moment. But on the other hand, you have the philosopher Arius Didymus, who firmly stated that joy does not belong to all sages at all times. So who's right here? Was Seneca maybe just exaggerating as a selling point to market Stoicism to the Romans?
The most logical resolution actually lies in the difference between possessing knowledge and actively thinking about it. The sage is always virtuous, meaning the source of joy is inexhaustible and constantly available to them. But Stoic joy requires a conscious awareness of that virtue. So while Seneca goes a bit too far in saying it's unbroken every single second, Arius is probably a bit too pessimistic. The reality is that the sage's joy is episodic, but it's incredibly frequent. Anytime they deliberate, act, or observe the world, they have the opportunity to consciously activate that joy.
Section 5. The compassionate sage, addressing the egoist objection.
This analysis leads us to a pretty serious objection. You might be thinking right now, wait a minute, if the Stoics only ever feels joy about their own flawless character and their own virtuous deeds, does not make them incredibly self-centered? Like, if they don't feel emotional distress when a neighbor suffers, or if they only care about their internal state, aren't they just smug, inhumane egoists? It's a highly valid suspicion. I mean, it sounds a little cold, right? But the Stoics had a beautiful answer for this.
We have to remember the other proper emotion we talked about, wish, the rational alternative to desire. The Stoics defined 4 specific species of wish: goodwill, kindness, affection, and love. And what's absolutely amazing about these is that they are entirely other-regarding. The sage doesn't need to wish for their own virtue because they already have it. Instead, their soul stretches outward, deeply wishing for the genuine happiness and virtue of their family, their friends, and their fellow humans. They don't want your money or your status, they want you to achieve true, lasting eudaimonia. This makes the sage incredibly warm, compassionate, and loving, not cold and distant at all.
Section 6. A day in the life of the Athenian farmer.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual practical reality. Picture our hypothetical ancient Athenian farmer waking up. Hearing the birds and recognizing the gift of a new day, he immediately feels good spirits about the universe's design. He heads into the market to buy a new plow. He deliberates sensibly about the price, triggering that enjoyment we talked about. And he negotiates fairly and justly with a haggard carpenter, triggering cheerfulness in his virtuous action. He doesn't feel disgust at the carpenter's appearance. He feels goodwill, genuinely wishing the man well. Later that evening, he reads philosophy, enjoying his own cultivated mind, before drifting into a peaceful sleep. It's just a seamless flow of joy.
And even minor annoyances are completely transformed. Imagine our farmer is walking home, and a child runs out of an alley, knocking him over and dirtying his tunic. Now, an ordinary person would feel a flash of the passion of anger or distress at their ruined clothes, but our sage? He just dusts himself off, recognizes that this minor accident is part of the grand cosmic order, and literally thinks, Zeus wills that I wear this other tunic. He feels good spirits instead of rage. He takes a mundane inconvenience and turns it right into an opportunity for joy.
So the crucial point is this. The ancient Stoics didn't want to kill human emotion. They wanted to upgrade it. By constantly chasing things we can't control, money, fame, what other people think of us, we trap ourselves in a chaotic cycle of violent desires and devastating distress. But if we shift our focus inward, prioritizing our own character, our rationality, and our kindness, we unlock a completely different emotional landscape. A landscape defined by calm cheerfulness, quiet enjoyment, and an unshakable reverence for the universe. It's a real game changer.
The ancient secret of eupatheia shows us that the ultimate human ideal isn't feeling nothing, it's feeling the right things for the right reasons. So I leave you with this. Knowing what you know now about the true nature of the mind, are you ready to stop chasing indifference and start cultivating true, unshakable Stoic joy?
Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope it changes the way you view your own emotional world.